So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 14th show and tell of this phase of development for BoPS. My name is Freya and I work at Suffolk Council, and I'm here today with two colleagues from our developer partner Unboxed to show you what we've been working on over the past 2 weeks. A big thank you, as always, to the BoPS partner teams at Buckinghamshire and Lambeth Councils, to colleagues at Suffolk, our colleagues at Deluxe, and of course to the expert development team at Unboxed for everyone's ongoing work on this really exciting and groundbreaking project. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this YouTube channel and we'll be able to keep you up to date on upcoming show and tells and any other exciting announcement about the project. And you can also follow us on Twitter for more news as well. This show and tell is being recorded, so if you have to drop off early or if you want to watch it again, then you can access it on our YouTube channel shortly after we finish live streaming. Next slide, please. So what is BoPS? So BoPS is a software application that's been designed by and for local planning authorities to process planning applications in a more efficient and intuitive way. So BoPS stands for Back Office Planning System, and that's what we're hoping to build. Well, not hoping, that's what we have built as an outcome of this project. Our users are planning officers who assess and make recommendations on planning applications, and their managers who then review those recommendations and make the decision to either grant or refuse those applications and to issue our decision to the applicant. During this show and tell, whenever we refer to RIPA, that is our sister project. So that stands for Reducing Invalid Planning Applications, and we're working with them together on these two projects. So just to be clear, RIPA is the new application service, and BoPS is the new internal system where officers and managers assess and make a decision on planning applications. Next slide, please. So if you have any questions about what we show you today or about the BoPS project in general, then you can see there's a BoPS questions link just beneath this video in the description. So if you pop any questions into there, then we'll return to those at the end of the presentation and try to answer those for you. Next slide, please. Okay, so what have we been working on during this sprint? So the focus for this sprint has again been validation improvements. So during the show and tell, we'll be discussing the new and improved validation journey, which based on our user research with officers, we expect will make it easier to support teams that validate applications. And we've also made some minor changes to the invalidation journey, which we're going to be demoing for you towards the end of the presentation today. Outside of validation, we're going to go over the latest updates to the immunity assessment journey research and discuss the end-to-end testing of the BoPS applicant service, which we've just started to do and that we think is going to be really beneficial to the project. So before I pass over to the developers at Unboxed, just a really quick note. Next slide, please. So looking at the decision notices, during the sprint, the partners have finally been able to agree wording on the decision notices. So that's 4 different notices that we had to agree. So that's for existing and proposed LDCs and based on whether or not they've been granted or refused. So it sounds like quite a simple task. It's actually been quite complex because these are legal documents. We've had to get input from legal teams and try to agree between 3 different councils exactly what that wording should be. So it's really great to have resolved that and to have got that into the production version of BoPS. So now I'm going to pass over to the Unboxed team to begin explaining the development updates in a bit more detail. So Melissa, please, I'll pass over to you.
Thanks, Freya. I'm Melissa. I'm one of the developers on the project, and I'm going to start by taking you through some of the work that our design team has been doing over the sprint, and then we'll talk about the features that we've developed over the past 2 weeks. So starting with design work, we are currently reimagining the flow of validation to try and make it even more intuitive so that we can integrate into all the steps that you need to validate an application, the processes that go through validating that application. So we're currently thinking about how that flow can be improved, how we can make it simpler and easier to use to the user. Next slide, please. We've also had our design team doing a large part of research over this sprint, and they have met with planning officers from the enforcement team that are used to doing immunity assessments so that we can understand better what their requirements are. We'll be able to explain this in a bit more detail once we have more concrete designs to integrate into the current app. Next slide, please. Now, as to the development work that we've done on this sprint, we have integrated the front-end application, BoPS applicants, with our back-end application, BoPS. This means that now our two apps are communicating better with each other, and we are able to do end-to-end testing. So this means that we will have a more resilient app for the future, and that we'll protect ourselves against future bugs by being able to better test the two apps in conjunction with one another, both the BoPS that's used by planning officers and BoPS applicants that's used by any applicant trying to reply to a request made by a planning officer. And next slide, please. Another large piece of work that we have completed on the sprint was an improvement to the validation process of the UX. So what was happening up until this point was that the language was not very clear at which point an application was being validated, or you could even accidentally validate an application by hitting enter on your page, because we didn't have a second step to prevent you from doing that mistake. We have now integrated a couple of different screens and a second step to the validation process to make it, again, more intuitive and less prone to errors in the future. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Ben. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Hi, everyone. I'm Ben. I'm a developer from Unboxed. And so on this slide, I just want to tell you that the last sprint, we've also been working on adding cancel validation requests to BoPS. So after an application is made invalid, an officer can cancel all the different types of validation requests unless there's already been a response from the applicant. And when this happens, a notification is sent to the applicant and the cancellation state is reflected in the applicant-facing service. And as with any major transactions, cancellations with their reasons are shown in the audit trail. So now I'm just going to demo you through that whole process. Could I just get a thumbs up from someone if they can see the staging website? Thank you, Melissa. Okay, cool. So let's start at the home page. Here I'm going to enter a planning application, and here we have a link to validate the application. So when I enter that, we have two sections here to either mark the application as valid or request some validation changes. So as a planning officer, if I know that changes need to be made, I can go into request validation changes, and I'll be presented with a screen where I'm able to add a new request. We've updated the copy here to indicate that you'll be able to add a bunch of validation requests, as there may be a few things that need addressing first before we actually want to notify the applicant so they can receive all the actions they need to take in one go. Okay, so I'm just going to add a couple of validation requests now. So just request a new document. And I will also add another change. And I'll add one more too. Okay, so you may notice that we've added a new status column with the value currently being not sent. And so this indicates that the application has not been made valid yet. So the applicant hasn't received a notification at this stage. And so the value of this is that I still may want to add a few more validation requests or review what I've already added before making the decision to actually mark the application as invalid. So we believe that's a better user experience for the applicant to receive a notification highlighting all the different actions that they might need to take, rather than being sort of bombarded with unique emails with isolated requests each time. And the copy here below summarizes that too. And we've also added a delete action for any validation requests made in error. Just to note, this is only possible before the application has been made invalidated. And so once you've gone down that route, you will no longer be able to delete a request, but only cancel instead, given that there's been no response by the applicant. But I'll be demonstrating this in a second. I just want to show you that we can delete a request. Cool. Okay, so now I'm going to mark the application as invalid. Awesome. And now if I go back in, go back into the application, we can see, sorry. Now, if I try to mark the application as valid, we now have a two-step process. And this action will be prevented if we have any outstanding validation requests. So if I click this, we should now see an error. So planning application cannot be validated if open validation requests exists. Awesome. So now I'm going to demonstrate the cancellations. So if I go back in, so now we have the option to cancel the request, and this is only possible if we haven't got a response. So I'm just going to quickly create a response from the applicant facing page to demonstrate this. And so I should have received an email when I invalidated the application before. And as you can see, the actions here reflect what I have on the application page. So let's respond to this, just anything. If I submit that, we can see that the action is complete. And if we go back to BoPS, we can now see that a response has been received. And importantly, we're no longer to cancel the request. But for the request that can still cancel, I can press this link and we'll be taken to a cancellation confirmation page. And so here we have the details of the original validation request, and then a text area where I must fill a reason to explain why the request is being cancelled. If I try and submit without a reason, I'm forced to enter a reason. So I'm just going to add a reason, I'm going to confirm the cancellation. And now the applicant should receive a notification of this cancellation. We can also see a separate table for the cancelled requests with the cancel reason and the date stamp of when this happened. And if we go back into the applicant facing app, so now you can see the email, welcome, your planning application's been cancelled, blah, 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 blah. Go back into the application and we can see the updated state that it's cancelled. And if I go into the cancel reason, I can see a summary of why it's being cancelled. Awesome. Okay, so I just want to show you the audit log as well. So if I go back into the application, check into the audit log. So now we can see that we capture all of these transactions and see exactly who did what and when. So we have a log of when I marked the application as invalid, and also we have the cancelled audit log with the reason. So this will reflect for all the different types of validation requests as well. And so if I just go back to mark the application as valid now, we should be able to, as there's no outstanding requests. Awesome, that's it for the demo. Back to you, Freya.
Thanks, Ben, and to Melissa as well. So that's all of our updates for today. So I'll let you know what we have planned for this upcoming sprint. So our agreed theme for this sprint is assessment. So that's going to involve more focus on immunity assessments and exploring how we can improve the presentation of proposal details that have been received from RIPA, so that it's easier for officers to use this information as part of their assessment. And we're also going to be working to keep finessing that validation process. And the partners will be attending workshops and meetings to discuss taking RIPA and BoPS to public beta. So there'll be a lot more about that next time. Next slide, please. So to anyone watching who wants to see BoPS for themselves in more detail, we would be really happy to accommodate this. So that could be a testing session with you, or it could be us coming and doing a demo for you. If you'd like that, just get in touch at either of the email addresses shown in this slide or through our social media channels. We'd be really happy to work with you to answer any questions and to show you anything that you find interesting on BoPS. Next slide, please. So thanks for joining us today. We really enjoy sharing these updates with you, and we're really open to any feedback or questions that you might have. So with that in mind, it's time to check if any questions have come through on that questions link. So I'm going to pass over to my colleague Gemma from Southwark to see if anyone has asked any questions. Gemma?
Hi, we've not had any questions sent through just yet.
Okay, we'll just wait a few moments. I have noticed that looking at YouTube, the first few minutes of the show and tell might not have streamed. if that is the case, then apologies for that. I'll get some information up with that video over the next few hours for anything that didn't get shown. So I do apologise if the first few minutes you weren't able to see anything, but hopefully you caught most of it. So we'll make sure to get that working for next time. So if there aren't any questions, then I think we're going to finish now. So as always, thank you again for joining us, and we hope you've enjoyed the presentation. You can catch the next update from us on Thursday, the 11th of November at 10:30 a.m. Thank you very much.